Hello again, my DIY loving friends. I am Sarah, and this is Medicated Housewife DIY, where crafting and mental health come together. Today, we're diving into some fabulous Dollar Tree DIYs that'll bring those high-end summer vibes right into your home. If you're ready to transform your space with stunning decor that looks luxurious without the hefty price tag, you're in the right place. So what are we waiting for? Let's go DIY together.
For this DIY, we'll be using a grand total of 24 of the natural color Tumbling Tower Blocks from Dollar Tree, as well as the super glue wood glue and one small wood cube, also from Dollar Tree. And to begin with, I place the wood cube flat in the middle, and I'm going to attach 4 blocks, one on each side of that wood cube, as you see me doing right here. Next, I'm gluing another 4 wood blocks. Each of them is placed on top of the end of the 4 bottom blocks that are attached to the wood cube. And then I'm going to place that whole piece aside for it to fully dry. Next, I take 16 more blocks, and I'm going to be creating 4 rows that each have 4 blocks in each row, with the 4 blocks attached to each other end to end. And then I'm going to place those 4 rows of 4 blocks aside for them to dry. I picked up one of these tall cylinder vases from Dollar Tree. I also have some of this rattan that's actually made out of plastic, which is not ideal, but we'll make it work. I will link a better one for you in the description box below, and I cut a piece of the rattan that was large enough to fit around the vase. I trimmed the top of the rattan off so it was the same height as the vase, give or take. And I placed it standing up on the vase, and I'm using some plain clear packing tape just so that I can hold the rattan in that same cylinder shape as the vase, and that's just temporarily while we are working with it. With that packing tape holding the rattan, I used some hot glue along the seam of the rattan to hold it in place permanently. And I'm going to remove that tape as I am going along and gluing until the tape is gone and the cylinder-shaped rattan stays perfectly in place. And remember, I told you about that rattan being plastic and not a natural fiber, so because of that, the color is not going to age and that bright yellow plastic color will remain. So I decide to paint the rattan with some folk art antique wax, which I'll link for you below. And I just use my brush to really push out and blend in the wax, just giving the rattan more of a natural toasted brown look and feel. I have a roll of paper raffia that I got on Amazon, and I'll link it for you below, but you can use the loose raffia that they sell at Dollar Tree to do this as well. I also have this beading needle that has an open middle, which is perfect if you are looking to sew something that's not thread, like paper raffia. I will try and find a needle to link for you to use for this, but if not, you can also do this with no needle. What I am going to do is to sew a cross stitch that goes up the seam of the rattan, which is going to be decorative, but it'll also help secure the seam together. It's dual purpose. And the cross stitch is literally just a crisscross going across the seam. I am careful as I go to make sure that the raffia remains flat as I'm sewing on the inside of the rattan and on the outside, like it's placed down flat. And when I'm done, I do slide the rattan back over that vase because I want to make sure that it will still fit and it didn't get too bulky inside from the raffia, which, you know, that's why we're making sure it's flat, because if it's flat on the inside, it won't take up too much room, it won't get too bulky, and it will still fit over the vase without a problem. So that is my main objective with keeping it flat as I go. I use that same raffia to stitch around the bottom of the rattan also, but that's more of a whip stitch just to first keep that rattan from unraveling at the bottom, but also decoratively to coordinate with the raffia sewn seam that we just did. It's not the neatest looking stitch, admittedly, because that bottom is a little more challenging to sew, but that's okay because the imperfectness of it kind of goes along with the organic look that we are going for. Once my wood block sets are dry, I mixed equal parts instant coffee and hot water to create a coffee stain, and I am staining all my block sets, all 24 blocks, plus 4 extra blocks just in case I needed them for any reason, because you never know. I stained all sides of all the blocks and the block sets with the coffee, giving them all this very nice warm wood tone, but they still had all of that wood grain visible. At first, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with the top edge of the rattan cylinder, but ultimately I used that same raffia and I stitched it around the entire top of the rattan, just like I had did on the bottom of it. I wasn't really happy with the lack of color contrast there was between the rattan and the raffia, so I decided to use a small brush and some antique wax, and I actually painted all of that stitched raffia. That includes the seam and the top and the bottom of the cylinder. And ultimately, I was much happier with how it looked when it was a darker color. It almost made it slightly leather or suede-like looking, in my opinion. And also it was a little time consuming to paint all of it, but actually I find painting small, items like that with a tiny brush, I find it very relaxing. So it was fine. I turned that set of 8 blocks and the wood cube in the middle over so that the flat side of the wood cube was facing upwards. And this is going to be a base or a stand for the cylinder and the 4 sets of 4 blocks. Those 4 sets of 4 blocks are going to be placed on each of the 4 legs of the base. But I needed to make sure that my vase and the rattan cylinder would fit within those sets of 4 blocks that are standing up as the sides. So I placed the vase there on the base while I was gluing the 4 block set sides on top of that base. Hopefully that makes sense to you. I just wanted to make sure it would still fit. And I used some tall items after I glued the 4 sides up just to hold them in place while the rest of that glue totally dried. And this is my gorgeous rattan lamp. I used a Dollar Tree battery operated push light that I just dropped into the bottom of the glass vase. And in my opinion, this lamp has such a high-end and upscale look. I'm loving using rattan in my projects lately. If you may have noticed, I don't know, because honestly, rattan feels very summer decor to me. Maybe that's just me. It just does. You'll have to let me know if you agree. For this DIY, I have this empty cardboard gift box I had in my recycling bin, and to begin with, we are using the box bottom. I grab 6 of these brown tumbling tower blocks, but we are not using any of the brown ones in this project. I'm just stacking them in 3 groups of 2 blocks to raise up the bottom of my box. We'll be using a total of 56 of the natural color tumbling tower blocks from Dollar Tree, as well as the super glue wood glue, also from Dollar Tree. And all I'm doing right now is placing all the blocks I need into position around the box bottom, because I want to make sure they are properly placed to fit before I even attempt to start gluing them. And I did have to move some blocks around to make sure all 4 sides of the blocks around the box would fit evenly and they would all fit together, if that makes sense. I hope that it does. The blocks are placed flat against the side of the box, and the pattern is this. The pattern is alternating with 1 block going lower to the table and its edge lines up with the edge of the top of the box. And then next to that, I place 2 brown blocks that are underneath, and they're just spacers, to raise up the next block so that the bottom of the block lines up with the bottom of the box. It is just a zigzag pattern up and down. And I think the more that you see me place these blocks where they need to be, the more this will make sense to you. Hopefully. To repeat, we are using a total of 56 tumbling tower blocks for the whole project. And on this box bottom, I am placing 9 blocks across those 2 long sides of the box and 5 blocks across the 2 short sides for a total of 28 on the box bottom. We'll use the other 28 on the box top, and that equals 56. Once the blocks are all placed and all my sides fit together, I begin gluing them in place just as they are. So I'm going to speed this process up for you, and to reiterate, it's a zigzag pattern. The lower blocks line up with the top edge of the box, and the higher blocks next to them line up with the bottom edge of the box, which we have raised up on some brown blocks that are underneath that box. We are placing 9 blocks on each of the long sides of the box and 5 blocks on each of the short sides of the box for a total of 56 tumbling tower blocks used. To cover the very top of the box, I'm using one of the wood rectangles from the wood rectangle pack that's from Dollar Tree, and I also used a box cutter to trim the rectangle to the same length as the top of the box. I use wood glue to attach it. Since it is a little hard to see in the video, I've placed blocks on top of the lower blocks on the bottom box. They are not glued yet, but I also placed the top of the box down on top of the box bottom, and these blocks I just placed will be glued to the box top using the same pattern we used on the bottom of the box, but it's reversed. So ultimately, our box top and box bottom are both zigzag, and they fit together just like a zipper. I really hope that makes sense. Once I've finished gluing all those lower blocks into place, I begin placing and gluing the higher blocks that fit on top of the higher blocks on that box bottom. And these blocks will end up placed above the wood rectangle top of my box top. It's kind of like a mirrored version of the pattern on the box bottom. And I keep the top and bottom of the box together like this until both sides are completely dry. When both sides are dry, I separate the 2 sides of the box, and I am staining the bottom of the box using equal parts hot water and instant coffee, and I coffee stain all the visible wood of the wood blocks on that box bottom. Meanwhile, on my box top, there is a visible gap on both of the long sides of the top of the box between the wood rectangle and the blocks. So I used 2 pieces of bamboo skewer, and I literally just stuffed them into the gap on both of those sides. That solved my problem. I coffee stained the top side of the box just like I did the bottom side of the box. I needed a handle for the top of the box, so I made one by cutting a wood ring in half, and I grabbed these 2 wood coins and then coffee stained all 3 pieces to match the box. To create the handle, I used some Gorilla Glue super glue gel, which I will link for you below, to attach each end of the wood half ring to the middle of each of those wood coins, and then I set it aside to fully dry. Lastly, I used the Gorilla Glue to attach my wood handle to the middle of the box top. And this is my tumbling tower block trinket box. It does open and close, and that handle is pretty strong. I just think it's a really unique looking tumbling tower block DIY. When it's closed, it does kind of look like a castle or something, but it is functional and it is made out of wood and a recycled gift box, perfect as a Dollar Tree DIY.
Thanks so much for joining me on this week's creative journey. I hope these Dollar Tree DIY decor ideas inspire you to add a touch of high-end elegance to your summer space. Let me know in the comments which DIY was your favorite and why. You know I love hearing from all of you. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Medicated Housewife DIY for even more DIY inspiration. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, remember that together, we're making the world a more beautiful place, one DIY at a time.